Today we're talking about the P3 hybrid hexagon twist, and I want to unpack that just a little bit before we dive into the folding. So a hybrid hexagon twist is a twist that is somewhere in between an open hexagon twist, where all of the pleats are approaching the center one space away from the center point, and we see this open hole on the back, and a closed hexagon twist where the pleats, and I should say, have their mountain folds approaching directly the center. In these hybrid twists, we have some pleats acting one way and some pleats acting the other way. So this is what I call the P1 or pentagon 1 hybrid hexagon twist. In an earlier live stream, we also learned the P2 hybrid hexagon twist, which has a second pleat cut away. So we still have 5 sides here, but it's the P2 hybrid. And today we're going to be learning the P3 hybrid hexagon twist, which has a third consecutive pleat changed to a closed position, and that is going to create yet another pentagon shape. Now this pentagon shape is the one I'll be using for the final day of Advent of Tess this year. So it's a particularly good time to learn this twist if you're interested in folding those patterns with me in December. Now, some relationships between this twist and the other hybrid hexagons. Here we have the threefold hybrid hexagon. So there's 3 directions, and you can't really tell, especially if I didn't have this extra paper around it, which way I'm holding it in these 3 different orientations. They're all identical. There's this twofold rotationally symmetric hybrid hexagon that's shaped like a rectangle. And the P3 hybrid hexagon has only one distinct orientation. Like you can rotate this 6 different ways on the 6 different, like orienting the 6 different grid axes horizontally, and you would see a different shape every time. So it's one of the asymmetric hybrid hexagon twists. It's closely related to the kite hybrid hexagon twist, which has 2 pleats shifted with 1 pleat open in between. And so if we shift this point of the kite hybrid hexagon, we also get the P3 hybrid hexagon. And hi everyone in the chat. Welcome, welcome. So I'm going to grab my 32-fold triangle grid on a hexagon. That's 32 divisions from one side to the opposite side. It's an equilateral triangle grid, and my grid divisions are parallel to the edges of the paper. And we're going to fold a pattern together that uses a lot of these P3 hybrid hexagon twists and uses them in non-rotationally symmetric positions. So I'm going to start with a closed hexagon twist in the center, and then we'll be adding 6 of these P3 hybrid hexagons around this closed hexagon. With the closed hexagon, I'm running the mountain folds of these pleats directly into the center, which means that they go directly to the corners. And then the valley fold is 1 spacing above the mountain fold in the unfolded state, which is interesting because in the folded state it's below but underneath. And I'm running through the setup of the closed hexagon twist fairly quickly because this is an advanced level tutorial overall. So I do expect you to be able to fold closed hexagon and closed triangle twists pretty autonomously. So I've got my closed hexagon twist set up, and I'll go ahead and bop it, grab it, twist it around, and then smooth it out once I have it fully rotated so that the mountain fold line is going straight all the way until it hits the corner of the hexagon. And then I'm going to be adding all of my triangle twists on the opposite side of the paper. So I'm going to flip over, and this twist is in the very center of the paper, so it doesn't matter what orientation I'm using when I flip the paper over. And I'll be adding these triangle twists at what I call tube pleat spacing. So that means that my new valley fold is going to be one spacing away from one of these folded mountains. I'll be using dashed blue lines for valley folds and solid red lines for mountain folds. My mountain fold is one spacing past the valley fold. And when these are folded, and notice I'm only folding it up until it hits the next pleat, I'm not folding all the way through, they come together to create a tube. And you can also say, well, there's two spaces between the valley folds of these two pleats. And I'm putting in a closed triangle twist here. So the intersection of the already folded mountain and my new mountain is the same grid intersection that I'm going to put my third grid direction on. Notice that I'm lifting from underneath to find that precise intersection. I'm not trying to pinch from the outside in because you will end up with the wrong grid line if you're not working from that point out. And I'm erasing the extension of the existing pleat that's going out to the right-hand corner. And once I've identified the grid line that my mountain fold goes on for this pleat, the valley fold will follow as I fold over, and this will be a left-handed twist. So everything will be rotating around if you have your thumb up and you curl the fingers of your left hand. And then I'm going to press just outside of the corners of this triangle to squash and firmly crease it with my bone folder. Giving a 1/6 turn counterclockwise, I'll set my tube in the horizontal direction heading off to my right, and I'll set up a new tube going down below. This is a repeat of the step that we just did. Valley and mountain. And I'll go ahead and put in that new twist, leaving the top pleat of the tube completely folded, the pleat coming from the first triangle twist, and folding through, creating a pleat overlap with the second twist. So from here, we're going to be exactly repeating this last set of steps. So I'll rotate, find the tube pleat, open the bottom pleat of the tube to find the mountain fold that comes directly to the intersection of the two other mountain folds on the evenly spaced grid direction that's crossing the existing pleat, creating a pleat overlap and squashing the new closed triangle twist. And repeating again, making the tube, finding the closed triangle, making sure my third pleat is in place and causing a pleat overlap, and squash. And again, for the fifth triangle. And if you if you haven't folded many twists before, I do not expect you to be able to keep up with the speed that I'm folding these, which is why this is recorded. And you can always go back and watch the descriptions of the first 2 or 3 to catch up with the remaining twists. Now the sixth one has a slightly different situation. I don't want to create pleat overlaps on both sides precisely with these orders of folds. The top one is going to be the same as what I've always been doing for the rest of these overlaps, but this one down here looks different. So notice that this bottom pleat is going through second, and here the bottom pleat is going through first. So there's two ways that I can resolve this. One way is to reorder the pleat overlaps, but the way that I want to do it for this tutorial is creating a compound wrap. So I'm going to open up just enough to see where my new valley fold is coming through, and I'm letting this valley hit the existing mountain, and I'm using fingers behind the paper to spread this out and make it easier for me to punch that grid point down. Notice that this is making also a turn in the mountain fold. I'm allowing my valley fold to also bounce around this corner that I've tucked down, and it's hitting now the existing valley fold from the pleat from our first triangle, and it's going to bounce again. So I'm going to let that valley fold come down, and I will get a bounce in the upper pleat as well. Or sorry, the upper fold, the mountain fold. So on this first bounce, I'm going to have a three-way intersection of mountain folds. On the second bounce, I already have that three-way intersection of mountain folds because I have a third mountain going down into the pocket. And now it's a matter of making sure that all my pleats are happy and in place, and then I can squash my closed triangle twist. So here I've got my 6 triangle twists around my closed hexagon and pleat overlaps for 5 of those pleat interactions and a compound wrap for the 6th. I'm going to grab that compound wrap in my right hand as I flip the paper over, just so I keep track of where that is. And then I'm going to start working on my hybrid hexagon twist on the pleat overlap clockwise from the compound wrap. So for this origami tessellation, which is called Dessication, the 2 pleats coming from the closed triangle twists are 2 of the ones that are going straight into the center of the hybrid hexagon. So I'll open up so we can see what it would look like if we were putting a closed hexagon twist here. And the order that we're going to use for the remaining closed and open pleats. So we're going to have these 2 closed. The one that is kind of clockwise around from them is also going to be closed. And then in the remaining pleat directions, so we got that vertical, our next one is over here. We're going to have an open type. This one coming in here is also going to be an open type. And this one in here is also going to be an open type. Let me double check against my crease pattern. I've got vertical, I drew them in the wrong orientations. That's why things were weird there. So I'll draw the corrected ones in blue. This is a right-handed twist, so what I should have drawn instead of this line is one up here. So I'm using solid blue for corrections here. And then my next one coming in here, and next one coming in here. So those are the grid lines for the mountain folds that I'll be adding. One piece of information that I can use as a reference here is that these two mountain folds are 3 grid spacings apart. And so I'm finding my mountain, I'm laying it down on its valley, making sure to remember which way I'm twisting this twist. Finding the mountain, laying it down on the valley, finding the mountain, laying it down on the valley. And I've made sure to leave plenty of space in here, so I haven't run the valley like all the way down to here. I've left space so I can find my 6th mountain. And this will create this kind of funky little notch. And its associated valley in there. And one thing we can notice in here, these parallel pleats have valleys that are 3 spaces apart. So on the bottom side, we have mountains 3 spaces apart. On the top side, we have valleys 3 spaces apart. So as I've let this lay down, those 2 pleats coming from the closed triangles are hitting like they're hitting corners of the closed hexagon twist, while the next 3 pleats are hitting like they're hitting corners of an open hexagon twist. And then the remaining closed type pleat is coming and kind of tucking under. The mountain is coming up like it's to a corner of a closed twist, but there's other stuff going on above, so it doesn't look exactly like the corner of a closed twist. I'll zoom in a bit to help that be more clear. And so I'm going to take these 2 edges that are identical to an open triangle twist and go ahead and squash those from the top. And reaching underneath and making sure to dent that little pocket sitting under there. And these little legs are going to get swept over and folded in half. So I'm making sure to sweep them around in the same sense that I'm twisting the rest of the twist. Next, I'm going to move to the next set of parallel pleats, moving clockwise. And I can open up my pleat overlaps. I've got one overlap in here and some more overlaps from the pleat I just ran through. I want to start by setting up my 3 closed type pleats. So 2 of those are coming straight in from my 2 triangle twist pleats. And the 3rd is going to go up and away. And when we're putting in this pleat, it's important to recognize that our valley fold is going to be to the left of our mountain. So we're going to be popping down the mountain of the pleat from the newest hybrid hexagon, where it hits the valley fold of the hexagon we're trying to put in. And that's going to be 2 spaces away from the corner of this hybrid hexagon. And we're not just popping it down and running the new pleat on forever. we're going to be doing a triangle wrap where we run the valley until it hits the valley of the existing pleat and then splits off and forms a three-way intersection of valleys down below. And we're going to have a three-way intersection of mountains up above. So this is the triangle wrap as opposed to the compound wrap that we did earlier. And I'm actually going to work my way around this twist in the opposite order of the pleats that I did before. And my first open type pleat will be in line with this edge of my, this kind of end of my hybrid hexagon twist. I can go ahead and set that up. And then my next edge will be coming out this way. My next will go out that way. It's really hard to draw on the paper when it's up in the air. And I can set these up, and as I'm setting them up, I'm always laying the pleat down on top of the layer that I was just working with. So I'm always laying things down on top when I'm adding the pleats in this order. So just like we saw before, I can press this open hexagon type corner to squash those two edges, then run my finger underneath to make sure that little pocket is dimpled and get those two pleats set in place. And then these two kind of legs of the closed hexagon are going to dimple over and fold in half as I squash in place. So one interesting thing about what we've folded so far is this is an exploded version of what we'll see on the final day of Advent of Tess, which I'm grabbing a piece real quick, which is this guy. So we've got that closed hexagon in the center, and the exploded part is coming from the fact that the triangles that we put in were one grid spacing away from the center, but these are right at the center, and that brings these hybrid hexagon twists right up against the edges of the closed hexagon. So that's something that you can try, and the tutorial for that compressed version will be released on December 25th. So I should clarify, 2024. These videos will be up much longer than a few months. So moving on to the next twist, I'll open up my pleat overlaps in this area. I'm looking at this point for a closed hexagon from these two pleats. And my third pleat that I'm putting in the triangle wrap for is going to comply with that closed hexagon feel. And so I can pop the existing mountain fold down, put in my closed triangle wrap with that. And now if I want to, you can see I've kind of emphasized where the pleats would be for a closed hexagon twist. And I can take those pleats and just shift them around right-handedly to make them open, and shifting this one, open, and shifting this one, open. So there's many different ways to find your pleats when you're folding these hybrid hexagon twists. And I'm going to go ahead and squash this one more quickly So you can see you don't have to pause between the stages. You can just kind of fluidly flow around from this more open side to the more closed side. And then with the next hybrid hexagon, I want to show you more of how I would fold for myself, which is identifying, okay, this is the spacing I've seen before, those 3 spaces between valley folds. Therefore, my new valley fold is going to be out here, 2 spaces away from the folded mountain. And I can go ahead and erase the extension of that pleat, putting in my triangle wrap before I've even opened my pleat overlap for the twist. Then when I open that pleat overlap, I already have a lot of the initial setup done, and I can add this new pleat that's in line with the edge that we see down here. The second new pleat, treating this like an open hexagon, and a third new pleat, verifying that I'm landing on a pleat 3 spaces from mountain to mountain from its parallel neighbor. And we can twist this down into place. You can see in here one tendency that the hybrid hexagon twists have is to buckle in interesting ways. Now this looks like it could be a cool way to squash a hybrid hexagon twist, and it's actually looking really familiar, so I might need to go look at some of my other pleats and see if this is actually what they're doing, some of my crease patterns rather. But to get out of this situation, what we need to do is pop this grid line. So it was tucked under. We're just going to pop it out. So we have these 2 long grid lines, 1 short grid line, 2 long grid lines, and then these 2 in, out jumps as we go around. We just need to maintain that boundary as we rotate around. And then we can squash our twist. Coming around to the 5th one, I'm going to again find the valley and the mountain for my hybrid hexagon twist relative to the distance to the next twist over, and set up that triangle wrap, and then opening up, I'll often actually put this final pleat in first. Excuse me. Grab some water. It's particularly cold in my office today, so I'm going to grab a jacket and be right back with you. Okay, so as I was saying, I'm running this pleat through before I find the other 2 pleats on these 2 grid directions, because it runs through other pleats. And so I like to have this securely locked away before I find my other two pleats that are just going straight out to the edge and not running into anything else. Cold weather. It's starting to be fall. So I'm going to go ahead and squash this twist. And now it's time to put in our sixth hybrid hexagon twist around the central hexagon. And here I'm going to use my same trick of opening up the pleat from the previous hexagon and putting in that triangle wrap right away. This is getting rid of some of the overlaps that we were going to have to open anyways. And again, that valley fold is 2 spaces away from the edge of the previous hexagon. So I've got my triangle wrap in place on that side. I'm going to open up and open up and open up. This is the compound wrap, so I have to pop it up. And what I want to do right away is put in the triangle wrap on this bottom side. I'm going to need 3 spaces between parallel mountains, as we've been seeing. And this new mountain is going to run under the existing pleat from the first hybrid hexagon. The top pleat is going to wrap around the bottom pleat. It's the same move for the triangle wrap, just seen from a different set of pleats coming first, like a different order of pleats. It's the same exact move. And then we can find our remaining 2 pleats, which are both acting open with respect to the center of our hybrid hexagon. And once I've got it rotated around as much as it'll go, I'll go ahead and squash the open edges, tucking the bits underneath and folding those closed bits in half. So now we have our closed hexagon in the center, those 6 closed triangle twists around it, our 6 hybrid hexagons around that, and we have 6 triangle wraps that we're going to flip over and take each wrap and flip the free pleat that's going off to the edge to turn that into a closed triangle twist. And I'll grab another sip of water. Yeah, so earlier saying that there's bad weather in Belgium. It's not so much that it's bad weather here as that we got central AC installed in my house this summer, and that involved replacing the furnace, and the furnace can't be tested until it's cold enough, so we can't turn it on until it's cold enough to test. So it's a little chillier than I would like in here. But that's not a problem. I've also got my thermos of hot tea. So from here, I'm going to return to the hybrid hexagon side, And what we're going to do with these hybrid hexagon twists, and I'm going to be looking over at the pattern I have on my other screen, is we're going to have a closed triangle twist at tube pleat spacing coming off of the middle of these 3 open type pleats. And we're going to, let's see, we're going to wait to fold that particular twist until we get more twists in place in here, and then we'll work into kind of this more corner area of the pattern. And we're going to have a little bit of dense spacing between some of our triangle twists. So what we're going to do is, well, I'm orienting this pattern the same way as the crease pattern that I'm looking at. And I'm looking and saying, okay, if I come off on this pleat and come down into this hexagon, and I've got that triangle above, I'm seeing that I only get one spacing between this mountain fold going up into this triangle and the mountain fold going down into the next triangle. So I'm going to have that single spacing and run. So I'm tucking this pleat that's sitting above under as a wrap. And I'm letting this area up above open so that I've got my fold coming out from the triangle and my mountain fold coming in from this new pleat without undoing the closed triangle twist that's sitting underneath. So what's going on here is that the pleat from the triangle is the last of the open pleats, and the pleat coming from our new triangle wrap is the first of the closed type pleats. And so if this is open, this is one spacing away from the center, and this is headed straight into the center, that means that this point is our center. So that's one spacing away from the mountain fold from the existing triangle and directly on the grid line from the new pleat. And then what I would like to do is find the fold for the pleat going that way, so I can get rid of this pleat with a triangle wrap. It's going to be an open type pleat heading that way, so it's going to pass one grid spacing away from the center that we identified, which means our valley is going to be one spacing from that. And we can take this pleat passing through here and pop it down where we're hitting with the valley and create a triangle wrap to get that pleat out of the way. And then we can choose which way we're going to go around our hybrid hexagon. We can add in our third open type pleat. It's going to create an accordion with the triangle wrap. And then our remaining two pleats are going to be closed type pleats heading straight into the center. And this is getting kind of close to the edge, so it might be a little hard to manipulate. And we can go ahead and squash our twist, again, making sure those little legs are pushing over and making sure these pockets are dented in. And that is setting up our triangle in the position of threefold rotational symmetry. We're going to flip the paper over and squash each of our new triangle twists. And we can choose at this point, so I'm going to mark this guy with a big old 3 because that's going to be our position of threefold rotational symmetry. We can use that as a clue to say, hey, I've got this tube pleat coming in under here, therefore my next triangle also has to match that spacing. So what I just did is I looked underneath here and said the next mountain fold has to be on that grid line because it was coming under the corner on the other side, on the other two sides, really. Those 3 red marks are in identical positions around this twist. And therefore, my next intersection of mountains for the next triangle twist is going to be there. And I'm going to have this one running into the next hexagon twist I'm folding. This one's already going into an existing hexagon twist. This one's just going out to the edge, so I'll let that lay down flat. And it's running through 2 existing twists as it goes. I can also apply that logic over here and say, hey, I'm going to have stuff running into this twist. These red bits are going 1 spacing and then running into the next triangle twist. Therefore, my next triangle on this end is right here because there's the corner, 1 spacing in to the center. I've got my valley going through here, and this is my 3 pleat that's heading off to the edge. I can go ahead and cap that off. One interesting thing about this position of threefold rotational symmetry is that it's the middle of the 3 open pleats. So this looks like, so far, we're going to put in an open hexagon twist. When I grab that with my right hand and flip over, I can see those 3 open type pleats. It looks very much like I'm going to put in an open hexagon twist, but my 3 remaining pleats are going to go straight into the center instead. So this is a common structure that we'll see when we're using hexagon twists in asymmetric positions around a position of 6-fold rotational symmetry, which is that we'll have these triangles in positions of 3-fold rotational symmetry, and then these 3 orientations of the asymmetric hybrid hexagon around those triangles. And we'll be working our way around. We're only going to be folding these asymmetric triangles in this ring around the center. We would need more grid to get back to our central twist, but I'll be able to point out where it would go. And then flipping over, I'm going to squash this triangle that's right by the edge. Corner is actually on the edge of the paper. And this one, instead of squashing right away, I'm going to open the first pleat overlap And notice this is strictly opening just that closest pleat overlap. I don't have to open the bottom pleat here. I don't even have to open the overlap further out. And I'm going to find the valley fold. And the path that the valley fold takes is the same zigzag. And the pen wants to push it down, so I'll just let it. The same zigzag path that we saw for the compound wrap earlier, because this is also a compound wrap. And we need to be a little bit careful to get this triangle twist tucked under as we fold, so that we have plenty of space to squash the new triangle twist on top. From here, if I want to add in some more triangle twists before I locate my hybrid hexagon on the other side, one candidate that springs immediately to mind is the threefold triangle that belongs right in here. If I open this bottommost pleat, I can find those two spacings that will give me the center of the next threefold triangle twist. And the pleat that goes out to the edge of the paper is the one that's going to fold over to let that lay flat. And I'll leave the one out here for later, but now we have 3 pleats going into our hybrid hexagon. And when I flip over, I know that the pleat from this triangle wrap is the middle of the 3 open pleats. So I'm going to open things up in here, making sure that this is popped up, but not so far up that it looks like these two are both closed pleats going, or that all 3 are closed pleats going into the center. Instead, I'm going to let this corner drop so that I have these 2 pleats acting open and this one acting closed and running in to this center. Then my next pleat going this way will be a closed type pleat going into that center. The mountain will run 3 spaces away from the next parallel mountain, and I'll create a triangle wrap down below. And I'll find my 3rd closed type pleat, and my remaining pleat here will be open, and it'll create an accordion with the triangle wrap. So I've got that new twist in place. We can finish setting it up and squash. And I'll do one more twist at one more hybrid hexagon at tutorial speed, and then I'll increase the speed to more demonstration speed, because we've already seen these moves with the other twists. So this is another position of threefold rotational symmetry. Like we saw before, I'm going to use the fact that I have this tube pleat spacing, these 2 spaces between mountain folds around the position of threefold rotational symmetry to set up first a twist on this side and then the twist on this side, using the fact that I'm going 1 space out to hit the corner of the new twist. These will be my 3 open type pleats for this hybrid hexagon, which has its center here. And then I'll find my 3 closed type pleats for the remaining 3 grid directions. And if the paper is getting unwieldy, especially since we're here near the edge, using the table as a set of extra hands is really helpful. And then I can squash my new hybrid hexagon twist. And flip over to squash those triangle wraps into closed triangle twists, taking care to untangle the first pleat overlap in here, turning it into a compound wrap instead, letting the valley go through and zigzag around, letting that triangle sit back down as I put the rest of the pleats back into place, and squash. And then the one that's easier to find is this triangle that's going to be a new position of 3-fold rotational symmetry. So we'll have these 2 overlapping between each pair of 3-fold rotational symmetry. That's actually going to be our 2-fold rotationally symmetric position. It would be clearer to see the 2-fold rotational symmetry if they weren't overlapping and needing to have like one layering or the other. But that is our 2-fold position in there. And I could refer back to the previous set of repeats to see where the next triangle would feed into this twist, but I've got enough information here to flip over and say this pleat from the triangle wrap is the middle of my 3 open type pleats. I saw from before that the 3rd open type pleat forms an accordion over the triangle wrap. So that really helps me get a fix on the center of this hybrid hexagon twist right there, in line with the grid line from the triangle below the skinny bar. And then I can put in my 2 remaining closed type pleats, with this one being 3 grid spacings away from its parallel partner or neighbor, however you choose to say it. And then we can go ahead and squash the hybrid hexagon. So we're alternating between 2 different orientations and placements of hybrid hexagons as we're going around in these sets of parallel pleats. In the next hybrid hexagon, I'm going to be starting a new set of parallel pleats. So here I've got my new position of 3-fold rotational symmetry. This is a fresh set of parallel pleats, and I'm going to have those 2 spaces to tell me where the next triangle is here. And I can go ahead and really firmly hold both the valley and the mountain of that pleat. And then I have the second triangle up above here, the triangle that will cap off 1 spacing away. And flipping over, those are my 3 open pleats. So my remaining 3 pleats are closed. And again, your hybrid hexagon might not want to keep this nice pentagon shape as you're putting it into place. It might want to dimple and do something else, but we just want to encourage that grid line to pop back up in place. And squash. And then we'll flip over and squash both of the closed triangle twists. And with this one, instead of just flipping the pleat over, I'm going to rearrange that first pleat overlap into a compound wrap. So now I'm starting the second hybrid hexagon on this set of parallel pleats, and I've got that tube pleat spacing to tell me what's coming into this position of threefold rotational symmetry. Eventually it'll be threefold. And then flipping over, I can go ahead and say, well, my third open pleat, this is the middle of my three open pleats. My third one needs to be an accordion over the triangle wrap, and that will help me identify the center of my new hybrid hexagon. And then I'll need one closed type pleat, same center point as this pleat, that I'll put in a triangle wrap, and the other will be directly folded to the edge. And everything that I'm saying here also applies if you're using a 48-fold grid or a 64-fold grid, or if you've put these twists closer together. One thing, if you do put the twists closer together, you will need to do a little bit more spacing between the groups of twists so that you have some positive integer number of grid spacings on this distance between folds. And then flipping over, I can squash my two triangle wraps into triangle twists and start the next set of parallel pleats. So I'll do that one rather quickly so we can get to the final set of parallel pleats, which will have 3 hybrid hexagons on it. So I'm setting up the triangles that tell me where my 3 open pleats are, using those to find my 3 closed pleats, and squash. Flipping over, I'll squash my new triangle twists, putting in a compound wrap for the one that has pleat overlaps on the pleat that's being flipped. And then find one triangle of the next hybrid hexagon. It's got that accordion for the third open type pleat. And then finding the remaining pleats, I can squash the hybrid hexagon. So you can see there's potential to fold these much faster than I was showing before. The first two hybrid hexagons of this last set of parallel pleats are going to be very similar, nearly identical to what we already saw. So here I have a position of threefold rotational symmetry, and I'll be setting up the two triangles that are around that I can reference off of previous instances of that symmetry. Those are my three open type pleats, and then I can identify the closed pleats. And squash. Flipping over. This is still identical to what we've seen already. Squashing these two triangle wraps into closed triangle twists, putting in the compound wrap on this one. I'm just catching an extra pleat in that set of pleat overlaps. And now with my next triangle in here, I'm going to immediately run into a pleat overlap. So that's a slight difference. I'm still going to have just that one triangle wrap that I set up for this hybrid hexagon. Flipping over, I can either go and try and find the center right away, or use the fact that this is going to be an accordion with the third open type pleat. And again, I have that extra pleat that's caught up in these overlaps. I'm going to have a triangle wrap down here, and then find my third closed type pleat and squash the new twist. And now this is the part that is going to feel different than what we've folded before. It's really going to be the same as the first of each pair of two that we've been doing, but we're going to have slightly different triangles helping to set it up. So flipping over, I'm going to squash the triangle wrap, and since this pleat that I'm flipping over to squash the triangle wrap has a pleat overlap on it, I'm going to open the first of those overlaps and put in a compound wrap. So I'm zigzagging around there. And squashing. Now I already have this triangle squashed that I would have put in next. I can go ahead and put in my triangle that will sit on top of here. And that is plenty, I'll say, in this case, for us to flip over and say these three pleats are our open pleats. They're defining a hexagon whose center is here. And the remaining three pleats need to be closed. And what we'll need to deal with is this extra pleat coming from our initial hexagon in this ring that we're going to need to cross with our closed type pleat. That's going to have its mountain and then its valley, one spacing away. That is going to cross down and cause a triangle wrap. Then we can find our remaining closed type pleats. And squash. So the big difference here was in precisely how we set up the one triangle wrap on the back, because that triangle there was already in place and squashed. And then we had this different triangle wrap on this side that we can now come over and squash our remaining triangles. All right. So we've got our final position of threefold rotational symmetry, and that is desiccation. So if you've folded along with me so far, you have now folded 6 sets of 3 P3 hybrid hexagon twists, or 18 of these twists total. This is about the densest way of practicing these twists. And I encourage you to draw on your paper the first time through if you need to, and keep folding these tessellations, and go ahead and try some other variations. Try using it in different orientations around the same starting setup, and try squeezing the spacing in a little bit more to get Mayapple from Advent of Tess 2024. So happy folding, everyone, and I will see you next week for a new tessellation with a twist that I've never folded in a main piece before. It's something that I've folded a demo of, but I haven't used it with other twists. So we'll see how that goes. Happy folding, and see you next time.